welcome to yet another Code Untapped Tech Talk. So, Jason, how are you doing, mate?
Oh, busy as always, you know.
I know. You've had a busy few weeks. You just got your startup app out into the market just the other week, didn't you?
Yeah, so mid-March, we launched it into Google Play Store and the App Store as well. That was good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Only a year late, but it's there.
I know. Better late than never. Yeah, and
it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, and people are really getting the value out of it. I mean, we launched with being able to, businesses that are onboarded on the platform are able to offer their customers Klarna credit, right, and they're able to, you know, their customers can pay them with credit cards as well. So that's really good. That was a good feature that we wanted to get out. And we have a two-way invoicing flow within the same chat. That was a great feature to get out as well. And yeah, we've already onboarded 30 businesses and we've booked over 100K worth of invoicing in that time, in the month.
So that's really first month, you booked over 100K.
Yeah. So this is really good. And what have we done? And yeah, the technology roadmap is moving on a pace as well. We've added Apple Pay as well to, and we've done a lot of work around improving the Stripe onboarding workflow as well for our customers. Yeah, in fact, I was doing a release today actually. So we've just the release going out today, hot off the press. We'll have Stripe onboarding for sole traders as well. So you don't need to have a so you don't need to have a company account. Yeah, you don't need to have a company or anything like that to get onboarded and, you know, use the services of youre for your sole trader business as well. Yeah.
So you know what? This sounds a bit like a pitch right here, and actually today it's all about how to pitch your startup, right, and how to give the perfect pitch.
Marketplace for freelancers and traders and so on.
Absolutely. So, you know, I know obviously I spend a lot of time working with founders. I've built my own startup. I advise a whole bunch of organizations. I judge for all sorts of pitching competitions and the rest. I'm actually judging one for another startup, another organization. I can't remember who is it, Hustle Tree. I think I'm doing that one for in the next few weeks, which should be really interesting. But how are you finding it? How's the pitching experience for you so far?
It's interesting because I was pitching to sort of VCs earlier on in January, yeah, and there was a big improvement from when I first did my very first pitch. There was like a really big improvement. I think that's because the vision had matured over time in my mind, yeah, and we were more focused on what the our sort of our go-to-market features were, so I could really talk to those features, and so it was I think it was much easier, it was much clearer in my mind as well, and I really prepared as well, yeah, so that I was up on my financials, I was up on the roadmap, I knew what we wanted to build, I knew what I had a fair idea what my competitors were doing and what our unique USP was as well. So I could talk on all of those points. But it's interesting because now the app is out, and really the conversation talks to traction and how you're going to build on that traction. And that's the expectation, I think, of the angels or the VCs that I'm going to be speaking to, yeah, of the investors that I'm going to be pitching to. So we really got to communicate that, and they really want to know about the vision as well. They really want to know that there is more to, there's more to the story. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've been on a bit of a crash course. So
it's been a bit of a crash course. So I'm going to ask you some questions actually.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you. Right? So what would you have wanted to know when you started out? And obviously I've given you a bit of advice and feedback and the rest. So I think it'd be great to get some of your questions around this.
It's interesting because we really focused. It's interesting because we really focused on the deck, more than the pitch. So, and we wanted the deck to look clean, and we wanted the deck to mirror the app. Yeah, so we wanted it to look clean and professional and to the point. But actually what we found was interesting. What we found is that the deck itself, because it was so clean, it was almost too clean. It was like too clinical, and it missed a lot of the deep. And it was like, it's interesting because a lot of the conversations that I would be having with people, that ain't in your deck.
Yeah, yeah.
That's in your deck. And yeah, you didn't communicate that. And oh, if you'd have told me that, and then this is where you realize that when you're pitching, you really need to talk. The deck is almost like like you said, it's just to get you in the door. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like a teaser. The deck is like a teaser, but the real like icing on the cake, the real substance comes, I think, from your pitch. I think it comes from your pitch. It has to come from your pitch. Yeah, they have to see that there is more than, just a pretty app, or, they have to see, where is this going? What is the problem here? And is this problem big enough that a lot of people are going to want to pay to solve it? Yeah, is
absolutely.
Yeah. And
why are people going to use this?
Yeah, and can it scale? And I mean, when I say can it scale, it's not can the problem scale, but you solve this problem. But does that mean that actually, does the solution that you've provided to this problem maybe even solve a problem in another space? As well. Yeah, so is there another area that's very similar to the area that you're focusing on that has a similar problem, that if you made a slight tweak or a change in the way that your process or the service that you're delivering works, you could solve their problem as well? So actually, could you solve, can the solution that you provide almost solve the problem for multiple verticals, essentially? Yeah, so that's one way of looking at it. And because you might be focusing on a particular vertical, and that vertical actually might not have enough to actually whet the appetite of a particular, of one of those, a big VC investor.
No, absolutely.
But it might whet the appetite of an angel investor. Yeah, it might be, they might see that actually, this could make a pretty good exit in maybe 4 or 5 years. And, it might exit with 20 million or something like that. And that could be sufficient. Yeah. But maybe that's not enough for a VC. Maybe what a VC wants is that, is a 25 times multiple. And hence they're going to be looking for solutions that can maybe scale across verticals. Yeah.
And territories.
And territories. Yeah. Or even if it doesn't scale across verticals, it goes up the vertical. So you own the whole stack of the vertical. Right. So there's different ways of scaling your business as well. And that's what I think needs to come out when you're pitching, that actually your vision is that you can take it this way and that way. Yeah. And there is scope to do that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think it's great how much you've taken on board through this process, right? As you built out your deck, as you started your pitching process. But come on, what question would you ask me then? If you're starting out as a founder, just getting your first pitch deck together, what do you think are the most important questions you'd have for me as an investor?
Well, I think I'd ask what not to say. What are the things that you definitely shouldn't say in a pitch?
No, that's a good question. It is surprising what gets said in startups. I'd start with one of the number one no's for me is there is no competition. Right? We're the only company doing this. Now that may be true, right? Maybe. But I would be very, very surprised if it were, right? Unless you're literally, exactly, a PhD student researching a brand new piece of technology that does not exist. I guarantee you someone else is doing it. And even then, I promise you someone's trying to solve the same problem as you and doing the same kind of research as you somewhere else. So you just never want to hear that phrase that there's no one else doing this. We're the only people in the game, because it sends a whole bunch of messages. One, it tells me you haven't done your homework, right? Which says you're not diligent, right? And that's a worry, because it tells me that you're doing this on a wing and a prayer, There's been very little actual research that's taken place. Either that, or you're lying to me, right? And you know that there's competition, and you just don't want to admit to it because you're afraid of telling me there's competition. Or you're just lazy, right? And you can't be bothered to do the research, let alone trying to do this out of pure, vision of your own. You just can't be bothered to do the research. So those are all bad reasons for it. But here's the other thing. Even if you are genuinely the first, that's not always a good thing, because being the first means you need to educate the market. And that comes on to my other next thing I don't really like hearing in a pitch, which is we need to educate the market about our product. And you see this quite a lot with startups who are doing something that they feel is quite unique and quite novel, which is that we need to educate our users about why this product is so great. I'm like, okay, come back to me in 5 years' time, once you've educated the market, because
while you're doing that, you're not making any money.
Exactly. It's just time, it's cost, it's expense. And at the end of that, you're then going to need to raise some more cash, but you won't have any traction. You'll have educated a whole bunch of people. But the other problem with that is that once you've taken up the cost of educating the market and you actually achieve that, other people just leapfrog over you. And they just take advantage of the space you've now created. And you see this happening quite a lot. So that's why you don't always want to be the first to the market. Sometimes it's better to be second. Okay. So those are two big things that I hear. Another one, I guess, is when startups say, oh, we've never really thought about exit. Okay, well, why do you think I'm here? Right? Our whole purpose is that we have to exit when we invest. If we don't believe there's an exit opportunity here, well, then why would we put any money into this business? So we appreciate you might not want to exit anytime soon, and you're looking at, say, a 5 to 10 year time horizon. That's fine, that's great. But I want to know that there's some thought to it. I guess other things, I think those are probably the key ones, right? It's really about understanding your market and understanding, what the future looks like for your business. I guess the other one that you never want to hear is that this is a £10 million business, right? We're targeting a small market. Well, why are you speaking to a VC investor if that's what you're doing, right? Because for a VC fund of any significant size, you need to be building a business that can generate 40 to 50 million in annual revenue in the next 5 to 10 years, realistically, right? Otherwise, there's no point. And that's not because it's not a good business, but because the fund can't generate the kind of return that it needs. So I think those are probably my core challenges that I face. I'm sure there are all sorts of other things that would come to mind throughout our conversation, but if I hear those, I'm like, oh, okay. This is
red flags, isn't it? The red flags.
This is going to be a problem. Yeah, exactly. All right. So what next?
So another question I've got is, should you tailor your pitch to the investor that you're speaking to or not? Because it's interesting, is because you almost so you're a startup founder and you've got your grand vision and you want to execute and but then actually it's almost, is it like a job interview? Because the general consensus for job interviews is that you really make sure that you do your research on that firm and find out all the things you can, and you make sure that you look at the job spec and you tailor you tailor your CV, tailor your introductory letter to match so that really there's a good match there. So should you be looking to do that with your pitch, or should your pitch be the same regardless of who you're pitching to? What would you recommend? What's your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. Personally, I think it's more important to find the right investors for your company, given the stage that you're at, and then build a pitch deck that is appropriate to the stage and type of investor that you're speaking to, as opposed to adjust your pitch deck to each investor. Because A, that's going to take us a big time commitment and waste of resource.
Yeah.
And B, if you're constantly chopping and changing your pitch and your approach, it's never going to sound right. It's never going to flow. It always looks a bit
haphazard.
Haphazard and a bit, trite. And you see a deck and you see your company, your fund's name in the middle of it, and we're building. It's just like, come on, guys, really. But absolutely, if you're pre-seed, pre-revenue, you need to be thinking about what kind of investors should you be speaking to, and what are the things that they look for in your deck, which basically comes down to really understanding your problem and really understanding your market, and getting a good, strong sense of your vision and who you are as a founder, right? So you're looking for investors who believe in that space, recognize there's a problem there, like the solution that you've come up with, believe in the vision that you're putting together, and ultimately believe in the team. And these are super, super early stage investors. Traction is important, right? No matter what stage you're at, but it becomes more important as you grow. At this first stage, really, when you're talking about traction, it's all about what can I show as traction? It's not always necessarily revenue. Sometimes it might just be, I've signed up thousands of companies on my wait list, and X number have shown, written a letter of intent, or I've done a number of pilots, I've done this, or I've got a social media following of 20,000 people, blah, 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 whatever it might be. But whatever that traction figure, it's important that you can show that. As you go down the line and you get into later stages of investing, what they really want to see is execution, right? They want to see how much of, how's your go-to-market strategy operating? What are you doing in terms of sales and revenue generation? What does that future pipeline now look like off the back of this? What comparables do you have that show what your trajectory now looks like compared to everyone else, and are you beating it? They want to see the graphics, they want to see the graphs, they want to see that, right? So I think it's really about, as I said, customizing your pitch, not your deck, but your pitch, and yes, your deck to a degree, to the type of investor and stage that your business is at, as opposed to the individual investor.
Yeah, I think that really, really makes sense, actually. Definitely. I've had experience with that.
Yeah, 100%. And it becomes a challenge. Don't get me wrong, your pitch deck will continue to evolve. It will. Every pitch will inform some change, and you'll make some tweaks, modifications, you'll get positive, negative feedback, and it'll continue to grow. But that's the pitch deck evolving because it should, not because you're trying to target it at a specific investor.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So really, so this is interesting because what you're really saying is that your pitch almost should represent the authentic state of your business. Yeah. So it definitely shouldn't be trying to be molded to match the investors at all. Yeah. If anything.
Yeah. You've got to be really careful with that, because you can fall into the trap of almost misleading your investors. Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we think you want to see. Great. Then you become Theranos, right? And you don't want to be doing that. And actually, investors are getting a lot hotter on what is the core unit economics, what is the business model behind the startup. Don't get me wrong, there are still startups out there raising crazy amounts, but for most of us, that's really what it's time to focus on.
So that's interesting that you mentioned the financials. So are you really saying that your pitch definitely changes as your as your startup progresses through the various stages of investment, and the pitch, they expect to look for different elements in the pitch depending on those different stages? Yeah. So I know, so we're really focused on early stage. So what would be the most important things that you would want to hear at an early stage? Yeah, so I'm talking about, either ideation phase or like pre-seed.
Right.
Yeah. So what are the really important things that you would feel are the most important things? Because like you said, at that stage, you haven't really got the traction to bring out all the fancy graphs and talk about the projections and stuff like that, because it is a projection. Yeah, you haven't got the numbers to actually say, right, actually, this is actuality. We are actually, you know, following this projection path. So what are the things that you really want to hear? Yeah. So you've told me what you don't want to hear. So now tell me what you want to hear.
No. I mean, I think at a really early stage, people always focus on the idea. Actually, it's on understanding the problem, right? Because people think they know the problem, they think they understand it, and if they don't see that the problem is significant, they step away, right? Because it's like, well, why should I care, right? Because the issue, if you don't have a genuine problem, is that investors will go, okay, all right, I get it, it's a problem, but there are already solutions for this and they're good enough, right? And this is actually a problem that most startups have as well, is that they think there's a problem and there isn't really one, right? And they build a solution the customers just aren't interested in. This is why we always ask for that early traction, because we want to see that you've actually identified a problem and you've been able to execute on it. So I think really understanding what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and then having a solution that really fits for this, that does something that the market doesn't cater for today, right? There must be something in that solution I can look at and go, right, no, you're right. No one's really solving this problem in this way right now. And I can see why people would want to adopt this solution, right? Now, is the market big enough for this? Does it get to us? Okay, yeah, it does. Okay, there are other people trying to solve this problem, but the way you've solved the problem, there's something here that no one else has quite realized or is quite doing yet, or can do, because they're not you. And that's when it comes on to then the team, and who are the team behind it. Why is this team so special? Why is this team able to do this? So these are all the core things that you're really focused on. Everything else adds to that, you know, really helps inform the picture. And absolutely, always, again, traction will be the thing that seals the deal for most of these. But often, you can't even get them interested unless you can really describe the problem effectively, right? Once you get people interested, the rest tends to be more, you know, just as you go, right? It just kind of falls into place. But you have to get them interested in the problem, and that can be difficult. As you've seen, Jay, certain areas, it can be hard to get people interested in the problem. It's like, well, is it really a problem? So trying to really get that across is actually really critical at an early stage. Series B company that's got 50 million, you know, or 10, 20 million in revenue is now well known in the space. You're going to get my attention.
Right? You proved it. You proved that people are prepared to pay for the solution.
Right, exactly. You've proven it. Now I want to know what your vision is. What's the future? How does this become an IPO-able company, right? But at the early stage, is this a product that people want? That's really what it comes down to.
And so, Ez, I know we come across a lot of companies, on a lot of startups with multiple founders, and one of the questions one of the things that I always see is sometimes what's the best approach? Should one of the founders take the lead in the pitch, or should all of the founders sort of contribute to the pitch? What's your views on that?
I don't like multiple people pitching. I think it's clumsy. It doesn't flow very well. Usually they don't understand the pitch as well as the founder. Normally one person owns it as well. So it just doesn't really work. And then there's awkward breaks and pauses in between, who's controlling. So if you want to really give a good quality pitch, I always say have one person take the lead, and they're the core person who gives that pitch. But then the rest of the team are there both to show, but A, to show that they're there, also B, to help answer questions, right? And that's really what's more important. So I believe one person to give the pitch, the rest of the team to show up and to answer questions. And it doesn't mean the whole company, but just key individuals from the founding team who can answer questions about technology or sales strategy or fundraising strategy, whatever it might be.
It's interesting. I think we've adopted that approach when I've had previous partners in the company. We've got them. I focus on the pitch, and then other members would say, will say do the demo, and show the app and stuff like that, and it seemed to work. But there can be a definite disjoint, especially when you're moving from one presenter to another presenter.
Absolutely.
It's natural, isn't it? It's just natural. There's a break.
Absolutely. And I think we're just about to run out of time, actually. So,
before you go, what would you consider to be the most important? What would be the most important advice that you'd give to a young startup who's about to, prepare a pitch? Maybe they're preparing a pitch for, say, like YC or Tech Nation or one of the accelerators or something like that, and they really want to make that good impression. What's the one bit of advice you'd give them?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think really understand what your business is, right? Really internalize it, and internalize that message that you want to give to everybody else, and focus on why people like your product, right? Because that's the thing that people will remember, and then everything else flows from there, I would say. Okay.
Excellent. I think that's some great advice there, Is. Thank you very much for educating us today. And
awesome.
I won't say carry on coding this time, guys, because we're talking about pitches. So practice your pitch. Carry on practicing your pitch and preparing your pitch decks.
Awesome, man. So look, that's been great. Thank you, Jay, for some really great questions there. But you know what? What's clear just from this chat is there's so much more that we could talk about, right? Yeah. And I think what's pretty special is going forwards, Code Untapped will be running pitch days on the first Friday of every month at the Code Untapped studio in Sydenham. And, we're already fully booked for the next 2 months, but we'll be opening up slots in July shortly. So keep an eye out for them, okay?
And see you guys soon.
See you guys soon, and see you at the studio. All right, take it easy.